Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about feeling bad about things. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what makes a developer feel bad about themselves? Well, the popular term is usually what we call imposter syndrome. I would say that that's the number one thing that makes people like software developers feel bad about the work that they do. So because I like to make a separation between when do you feel bad for yourself, like you as an individual, or do you feel bad about your working conditions and things like that, because that's where it gets a little bit, there are many reasons as to why someone can feel bad about themselves. If we talk about at a personal level, you can be insecure about yourself, you can be insecure about your looks, etc., etc., right? But then you also having environmental things. You can feel bad due to the fact that you have a really shitty boss, or maybe you have bad work hours, or you feel like that you're not getting paid well, or like there's all these sorts of things, right? But from my interpretation of your question, I think it's more about you as an individual. Why do you feel bad about yourself as a software developer? And that's where the most common term we use is imposter syndrome. Now, the basics of imposter syndrome, this is not, of course, exclusive, the perfect definition by any means, but it comes down to the fact that you feel as if you are not good enough to be in this environment. You feel as if you are sort of faking it and everybody else is super smart and you're super dumb, and you sort of it's hard for you to understand how everybody else seems to know things or be able to produce things, and you always seem to fall behind, or you always seem to not be able to pull your weight, or things like that. That's usually the way it works. It's a phenomenon which I think is hilarious because I fall victim to it as well. I can forgive or forget, depending on how you want to define it, a coworker or several coworkers causing production bugs, maybe I guess several times. They have to really do it often for me to even remember that they caused it. But every single time I do it, even if it's just once, even if I have done it like once in a month and everybody else has done it like several times a day, right? I still feel like I am the big problem here. I made a mistake. It's like 10 times worse. I'm, as I said, I'm almost always willing to forgive somebody else, but never myself. And that is, I think, something that a lot of people can relate to. Well, I'd like to think so anyway, because I see it all the time. And it's actually, that's where a little bit of emotional intelligence can really help when you're coaching juniors. Because when you sort of remember yourself, how you used to feel, like, for example, when you're going to do a production release, or you're going to do this thing, or like, it's sort of, I like to call it good form for you as an experienced developer to know that, hey, that junior who just made a production bug or something, they're probably freaking out over the fact that they caused this bug. And maybe it's not actually a big problem, but to them it's a big problem. And so I would like to make sure that when I work with junior software developers, that I talk to them and I go, hey, dude, it's okay, right? I mean, I know that my words, of course, are not going to save the day or anything like that, but it might mitigate a little bit of that anxiety and imposter syndrome, because people tend to feel very bad when they make a mistake, whereas they're more forgiving of others. Not always, but in many cases. Same thing when someone, ships, they don't do so well in a code review or things like that. And that's, I've always found that to be very appreciated by my juniors, and I mean even not just juniors, because imposter syndrome is not a junior thing. I have worked with senior software developers who sort of like, they still want to impress people, or they want to prove themselves, or things like that. And at the end of the day, it comes down to this very human thing. I like to make the analogy to strength training. So people who are a little bit who are overweight or unfit or something like that, they will always look at these beautiful, gorgeous athletes or people who are really, really fit, and compare who they are, with this person, and they feel usually very bad, because the ideal is to look at this beautiful supermodel or like fitness guru or whatever, right? That is the ideal, right? And programmers do the same thing. It's something that's not exclusive to strength training or programming at all. There are actors who do the same thing, musicians, etc., that we do. Everybody compares themselves to somebody else who they perceive has like made it, or they're more have more talent, they're better, etc., etc. And for us programmers, it's down to talent usually. We compare ourselves to how smart we are or how well we perceive ourselves of doing to how well somebody else is doing. And that can be very dangerous. It's something that I focus a lot on when I work with software developers who have that syndrome, if that makes sense. Where if this is one of those situations where I try to not do it so much if I'm not the team lead, but if I am the team lead, this is something I focus a lot on, because one part is that usually when I am the team lead, I get either elected or like I get put in that situation because I'm perceived to be the most experienced software developer in the group. And one of the things that is very important, it's paramount, I would say, if you're going to be an effective leader of people and not sort of put yourself too high above other people, but still maintain that human connection that is so important to make meaningful bonds and really lead by example, is that the people have to, like your team has to see you crash and burn. And they have to see that you can fail and that you can do so gracefully. Own your own mistake and show them that it does not matter that you make that this mistake was made, because we are going to get through it as a team. And then you stand up again and you use your collective talent to fix the situation. This is something that I do a lot, and I also emphasize a lot with my team members that we are at different positions in our personal development. It's exactly the same thing I did many years ago. I used to teach Swedish to foreigners or like immigrants or people who came to live here in Sweden, or well, specifically here in Gothenburg where I live. And I also helped some of the Swedes with their English because, well, I'm not the master of the language, of course, but I know it well enough to help people a little bit. And so one of the first things that you have to bridge when you're teaching someone a new language is that you have to make it okay to be wrong. You have to make it feel emotionally okay to embarrass yourself. And I mean, it's the same thing when I taught martial arts. A lot of people felt like you want to check if someone knows how to fight, ask them to do shadow boxing. I can promise you that you will be able to tell how well they know how to fight based on how comfortable they are with shadow boxing. And because people don't want to feel stupid, right? So as the person who's trying to fix this, it's a very good idea for you to first and foremost figure out how uncomfortable the person is with the dynamics between you, and then just have that honest conversation with them and say, hey, I know that this might feel a little bit weird, and especially when it's a junior, I understand that this was stressful for you and so forth. But I just want you to understand that I have been doing this for a lot longer than you have. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be at least as good as I am when you have spent the same sort of time. But you have to give yourself some room to explore and some time to practice, because it's completely impossible for you to be at my level when you're just starting out. I promise you, if we help each other, you're probably going to get there faster than you think. But you have to be okay with that you're sort of learning now, and you're sort of trying to become, if it's programming, to be better at this programming thing. And when I was doing languages, I mean, a lot of people felt really anxious about speaking Swedish to me because I'm a native speaker. And I go, dude, do you have any idea how few people, even after 30 years living in this country, can speak Swedish so well that I can't tell that you're a foreigner? But that's not the goal. The goal isn't for you to be at like a native speaker's level. The goal is that we can talk to each other. That's it. That's the whole goal. Same thing with my programmers. Your goal should not be to prove to me that you are a good software developer. It's not about you impressing me. It's about you being able to do the job that we are all paid here, to contribute in a meaningful way at the level that you are hired to work at. That's it. And within a few years, you're going to be at my level, or you're going to reach a higher level, and then they're probably going to pay you to do even more advanced stuff. And then the goal is to be able to do that. So try to focus on that. Try to focus on doing a good job at whatever skill level you are, instead of focusing so much on how big the difference is between you and someone who's been doing this for 20 years or, you know, something like that. So what I want you to take away from this is that usually the reason why software developers feel bad is because they have imposter syndrome or something similar to that, where it basically comes down to that they are painfully aware of that they are not as good as someone else or some other experienced person and so forth and so forth. And the reality is that every single human feels that. Probably even the people that are famous and super talented have this anxiety where you want to be proved to others that you are good, and there's really no effective way of doing that. With it's really down to self-reflection. The only tips that I can give you is to really understand that you have to set your expectations in proportion to where you are, because it's unrealistic for someone who's very overweight to go on an exercise bike for a few hours and then be like a fitness model. That's not going to happen. You can still get there, but you have to understand that it's going to take time. And the people who are fitness models, they have probably spent quite a lot of time getting to that level. It's not something that just magically happened. It's just that you look at the end result and you forget all the work that went into achieving that goal. And at the same time, you have to also sort of remember, guys, someone who is really talented in one thing, they have sacrificed some things to get good at that thing. But if you test them in another arena, I mean, if you ask, I mean, how many fitness models do you think are like masters of mathematics or chemistry, etc., etc.? It's a trade-off, right? Because nobody is the best at everything, and the same thing goes for you. And so I really urge you to start thinking in those terms rather than thinking how big the difference is between you and somebody else. Start to think about how can you make yourself as good as possible for the level that you are. Because when you get really good at just focusing on being the best that you can be at this present moment, over time that's going to translate into you being at the same sort of level as these people that you are looking up to today. And that at least has helped me a lot. And then of course for those of you who don't have imposter syndrome, or you are seniors, or you're able to deal with this, remember that your other team members might have something like this going on, and it really does help a lot by showing people that it is okay to make mistakes, and it is very important, I find, to make that human connection with people and make them realize that I'm not here to judge you. We are here to collaborate and work together to achieve some goal, and the only thing that matters is that we achieve that goal, and that each person who is hired to do different types of things within the role, it's not a competition between us who's the best. It is a matter of working as a team, and that each person contributes in the best way that they can and performs in accordance with what they're hired there to do. Have a great day.